Hi everyone, welcome to this video. This evening we're going to talk about the Breckwell brand analog pellet stove controller and try to give you some troubleshooting hints on what to look for if your stove is not functioning correctly and you have questions on whether or not your pellet stove controller is the cause of your problems or if there's something else wrong in your stove itself. The number one problem that I see reported to me from customers is that they cannot get this green LED light to come on anymore. I always ask them when the last time it was that it came on, and it was, a lot of people tell me it was fairly recent, so they're confident that the green LED was functional recently, which gives me a sense that we've got a problem elsewhere on in the system. So the first thing that we need to look for is, with the stove connected to the wall outlet, when we go to the on position, the exhaust fan should spin up. That is the first and foremost important thing that needs to happen when you turn it on. You turn it on, the exhaust fan must spin up. If it doesn't, you need to take time to figure out why. You need to find out if the fan is seized, or if there's blockages preventing it from running, or if there's an electrical failure someplace, either in the wiring or on this switch, possibly on the controller, that is causing the fan to not spin up. So if the fan is not spinning up, there's no point in going anywhere else. You need to get the fan spinning first. In reality, it's highly unlikely that you have a problem on your controller, because basically house current comes in through the wires, it goes through the on switch, and once you turn it on, power is sent directly out back to the fan to turn it on. With all that said, if your switch feels normal, if you have good action on it and it doesn't feel loose or tilted or damaged, then most probably you have a good switch and you have a good circuit. I have seen instances where the circuit board itself was burnt. That's happened a few times, but you should be able to spot that yourself by inspection. And if you don't see a burnt spot around the connection area, then most likely your switch feels good, then most likely your circuit here is good. So that brings back power back to the back from the controller to the fan, and it should be that the fan would spin up. If it doesn't spin up, you may want to take, if you're inclined, a power cord and try to power your fan independently, but that's something that you have to do based on your skill set, and you have to remember that you're dealing with line voltages, so that could be hazardous. So if you are able to determine that your fan is good, it's not seized up, it's not stuck, it's not whatever the problem is, it's clean, then your fan should spin up. So the next step is, you've got your fan, knowing that you can spin it up, you press the on button and your fan, you know that it spins up, you can hear it. Then the next step is to press the auger button, and pressing that should put your controller in automatic mode. Here's where a lot of problems happen. People press the auger button, the green light here does not light up, the controller does not go into automatic mode. In spite of that, let me turn it on here, you're not in automatic mode. You do have some control of your room fan, so if you had set a fire and your fire pit was hot, like 110 degrees Fahrenheit or more, then it's quite probable that your room fan would come up and you could control the speed here, or that you could set it to maximum using the high fan button. The other thing that could happen is that you manually press the auger button and the auger will drive. But recall, I'm not in automatic mode right now, so that is only temporary. So those two features that I just demonstrated are independent control completely of the automatic mode. That is to say, you don't have to be in automatic mode to manually feed pellets, and you don't need to be in automatic mode to set the fan to high if you're at 110 degrees or higher, or by changing the speed through this dial here. You can see the light bulb over here indicating the convection fan getting brighter and dimmer. So that's all independent of being in automatic mode. The caveat here is For the convection fan, there's a thermal switch that needs to be set, that needs to be closed, and it would only close if you had a fire in there and the fire was 110 degrees or higher. The other caveat is, for the auger to run, the stove must not be in overtemp condition, or must not have been in overtemp condition where the temperature switch has tripped and is not reset. I say that because some of those switches have a red reset button on them that you can reset. So if your overtemp is not reset, your auger should drive, and if your switch or your firebox is at 110 degrees or higher, then your convection fan should happen. And that can happen, of course, if you've loaded a charge of fuel in there and you got it started, you threw in a couple handfuls of pellet and the thing burned for 15-20 minutes. Everything seems normal except you can't go to automatic mode. That condition would happen. But it won't happen if the fire pit is cold. So just remember that in the future. So here we are. We've got our exhaust fan is spinning because of either it was never a problem or we've repaired problems there. We've tried pressing the auger button and the green light still does not work. So the next step to make this work is to go look at our vacuum switch. As for the diaphragm switch, there are some tests that we can do to ensure that it is not being the problem. We can jumper out the wires that are connected to it. So when you look at that switch, you should see gray wires, possibly two of them, possibly only one, and one white wire connected to the terminals on that switch. You can disconnect those wires. Remember, of course, that you have to disconnect the stove from the power outlet first. You can disconnect those wires from the switch and short them together somehow. Some people use a paper clip and then they safely put the switch in a safe position where it won't cause a short circuit to the frame of the furnace. You jumper those two wires together and then you come back, you turn on your controller, you press the auger, and that should cause the green light to come on. If it does, it indicates you have a failure in your vacuum detection system. The failure could be a bad switch or a clogged tube or clogged fittings. The vacuum switch itself can be located at 3 different places on the furnace. I've seen it at 3 different places. I've seen it close and below to the left of the auger motor. I've seen it on the other side of the stove where all of your thermal switches are located, and I've seen it mounted on the back wall of the furnace itself. But the pressure switch, the key thing about it is it has a rubber tube connected to it, and that rubber tube is routed to the rear of the firebox down below. So the tube is probably about 10 to 12 inches long. Sometimes it's made of silicon. It could be red, it could be black. It is routed from the back of the firewall, a fitting there, to the fitting on the diaphragm switch. I'll add a diaphragm switch to the video to give you an idea what it looks like. But what's key there is with the fan now running, it is generating a low pressure zone in the firebox, providing of course that the door is closed and there's no leaks. It's generating a low pressure zone. That low pressure zone is sensed and transmitted to the diaphragm switch via that rubber tube. So what's important here is that the rubber tube must be clear and clean. The rubber tube cannot be kinked, it cannot be clogged. It cannot be too loose on the fittings at either end. So it must fit on snugly so it doesn't do a vacuum leak. Also, the fittings themselves must not be clogged. So you probably have to remove the rubber hose from both ends of both fittings, use a small screwdriver or a drill bit or something like that to push any debris that might be stuck inside the fittings and preventing a low pressure from being fed forward through the tube to the diaphragm switch. So that's something that's very important. You need to go in there, you need to find the diaphragm switch, you need to look at the rubber tube, you need to inspect it closely, you need to make sure that it's not clogged, not cracked, not kinked, and that the fittings that it fits onto are clear and not full of debris that would prevent vacuum from being transferred from the low pressure zone of the burn chamber to the switch. With the controller in automatic, it takes about 30 seconds, once you press this button, it takes about 30 seconds before the auger spins for the first time. Some controllers, not all of them, some controllers have a porthole here, so a view hole, so you can see a green LED that is on the circuit board behind it. I'm trying to hold this up for the next cycle. When that happens, the green LED here should come on at the same time as the auger motor comes on. So basically that's the controller sending the signal out to the solid state relays to drive the auger motor. It is possible, as I mentioned before, that you press the manual feed and the auger will work, but at the same time the green LED flashes on and off, but the auger does not work. That would be like if the motor was disconnected, or for example. So the green light will come on the controller, but it will not cause the auger to drive, as we see there. So that was just simulation. But if that's the case, then we have a solid state relay problem on the board, and it needs to be repaired. That is barring, of course, what I said earlier, that the overtemp must not be tripped. The same goes with this low to max position. As you rotate it, if the convection fan is stuck in high, or the convection fan does not come on or is stuck in low, then we have a solid state relay problem in our controller, and it needs to be repaired. The solid state relays for both of these comprises of a number of parts, a triac driver, a bunch of resistors, some capacitors, and some isolators. So which part it is exactly is difficult to say without doing further troubleshooting, but that's outside the realm of this discussion. Basically, I'm calling it the solid state relay. So on this circuit right now, we've got the auger running. We have the controller running in automatic mode. It is cycling the auger on and off, and we see it by the light bulb simulator being cycled on and off. And the same thing with the convection fan. As I cycle through the ABCD position, the light intensity changes, which would indicate that the fan could run faster or slower. I need to note for everybody that positions D, E, and F for the fan remain the same. They don't change at all. That is hardwired onto the circuit boards. So when you go to D, that's the maximum speed you'll get. If you go to E or max, the fan will not run any higher. The duty cycle of the auger will change, but not for the fan. And that is hardwired on the controller. So that's it. I'm going to recap real quickly here. Basically, if you turn on your controller and you're not able to get the green light to come on, you need to look at a couple things. First of all is turn on your controller, listen to see if the exhaust fan is spinning or not. If it's not spinning, it needs to be fixed. Secondly, if you turn on your controller and you hear the exhaust fan spinning, but you press the auger and this still does not come on, then you need to look at your exhaust sensor. The quick definitive test there is to short circuit the two wires that are on that switch, and that should make this light come on. If it does not, then you have a controller problem. If it does, then you have to troubleshoot your exhaust, not your exhaust, but your vacuum system, which means you have to look at your tube, your rubber tube, you have to look at the fittings, you have to make sure it's not clogged or kinked or cracked or burnt, stuff like that. And you have to make sure your fittings are not clogged. So put that back together and give it another test. That should clear up the issues there. Once you get the controller on and you're able to press the auger button and this comes on, that means that your exhaust fan is running and your vacuum pressure switch is functional. Then you have to wait 30 seconds for the first cycle of the auger to come on, and that'll come on shortly here to see the auger come on. And that also allows you eventually to turn the speed up on the convection fan. Just remember also that the manual feed and the high fan switch is completely independent, is not tied in any way to the automatic or automated functions of this controller. So if they work, yet the automated functions don't, that's not a surprise. They are completely independent of each other. It does not, these guys working does not mean that the automated function will work. So I hope that helps everybody. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is in the notes down below for this video, the description of this video, or leave a message and I'll try to answer back to you. I generally do not sell controllers. I don't have any. They're kind of like gold. They're hard to get. So I rely on you sending me your controller. I will repair it. I will do a final test on it, and I'll return it to you. So that's the mode of operation that I'm in. If I had controllers to sell, I think they'd sell out fairly quickly because there's a lot of people always looking for them. But I find that every single one that I've received, I have repaired. Whether it was problems with the solid state relays, problems with the burnt circuit boards, problems with the timer, or problems with the switches. I do have these switches in stock. I can get this switch. I have parts for just about everything on this control board. So if you have a board that needs to be repaired, let me know. You can call or text me at the number in the information for this video. I'd be glad to try to answer all your questions. But my questions, first of all, will be, are you able to get this green light to come on? Because there's no point in you sending me a controller for repair if this green light does not come on your controller. Because 90% of the time, the problem with this green light is in your stove. It's not on the controller. All right? I hope this video was helpful. Leave comments and subscribe. Thanks. Bye-bye.